Hi guys, I'm Officer Harkins with Rockton Police Department. I'm a night shift officer on the patrol unit, and I am here to read a couple of chapters to you guys. Chapter 3, Evan. On the absolute last Monday morning of 5th grade, Evan climbed the dirt road that led from his house to the Martinville Town Green, where his school was. Climbed because it was mostly one long hill. Chapter 4, Al. Hold on now. I would say take my hand, but we both know that is impossible. The eye of the story has moved. The eye has left Mortimer the six-toed cat, and now it's looking at Evan, the fifth grader. Some people really dislike that. But Evan and Mortimer live in the same town. In fact, they are about to cross paths. Briefly. I live in Martinville too. That's where all of this is happening. It will make sense. Soon. Chapter 5. Evan again. Just ahead, Evan saw the magnolia tree that meant he was 3/4 of the way to school. He checked his watch. By running a little bit, he had earned himself 5 free minutes. Evan loved making free time and then spending it however he wanted. His back against the tree trunk, he looked down the hill he had just climbed. It was the less fancy part of Martinville. Dirt road, no sidewalks or streetlights. To Evan, it was the most beautiful place in the town. Lots of trees and sky, and now that it was almost summer, everything was covered in a bright new green. In the spring, Evan's road was usually muddy, and he loved it slightly less. He took 2 apples and his journal out of his backpack. The apples were not store apples. They didn't really get shiny, no matter how much he rubbed them. They were from the apple trees planted behind their house by his father's great-grandmother, or someone like that. The unshiny apples were lumpy-shaped and kind of small, which was why Evan had 2 of them. Sometimes in the cafeteria, kids said "ew" to Evan's apples, which was why he liked to eat them before school. They tasted perfectly great. Evan found his pen, opened to a new journal page, and waited for an idea to bubble up. Mr. O'Neill said they could write about anything at all, but they were supposed to write something every day. He waited, but no ideas bubbled up. Instead, he thought about how, early that same morning, Mr. Vanderbilt, who was some kind of businessman, had shown up on Evan's front porch before breakfast, demanding a refund from his dad. "What did you do? Send them away for a long weekend?" He'd called through the screen door between the porch and the kitchen. "You were supposed to kill them." The mice in his house had come back just 3 days after Evan's dad had supposedly exterminated them. And now, Mr. Vanderbilt said he was going to have to hire a real exterminator to do the job. "Refund!" he shouted through the screen door. Evan's father had sat down at the table and written Mr. Vanderbilt a check. In fact, Evan knew that his dad did not kill any mice. He trapped them instead, in small cages, and then he drove them over the mountain, where he released them into some woods. "I don't know why they can't stay put. It's a perfectly nice little forest," Evan's dad muttered after Mr. Vanderbilt left him with his refund. "Plenty of berries and things." "Too many owls?" Evan's mother guessed. Said his father, and he stomped down the cellar steps to his office. His parents had had this conversation many times before. A lot of people came for refunds. Evan pressed his back against the tree trunk, swallowed the last of his apple, and watched the clouds traveling the soft blue sky. They were the feathery kind. Evan's dad had taught him some things about clouds on their campouts. He braced the journal on his bent knees and started writing. "Cirrus clouds are always high up, never low down. To me, they look like feathers, taste like hot chocolate, and smell like bug spray. Cirrus clouds can move really fast." He knew he couldn't smell the clouds, but they reminded him of camping out with his dad, sitting cross-legged on their sleeping bags and drinking hot chocolate for breakfast. There were always little bubbles of dry hot chocolate powder floating on top, which Evan loved. When they finished their hot chocolate, they would make instant oatmeal in the same cups, and then his dad would say, "Let's go find a trail." He didn't write all of that. Instead, he tossed both apple cores down the hill, not littering, his dad always said, because they would be eaten by grateful animals. Then he stuffed his journal into his backpack, stood up, and put on his imaginary cape. No one knew about the cape. His dad had given it to Evan way back in kindergarten, when Evan was having trouble saying goodbye at the classroom door in the mornings, the way everyone was supposed to. Evan had kept the imaginary cape all these years. In his mind, he knew exactly what it would look like if it were real. a red felt triangle with 2 strings to tie on it. Too small now, for sure. Evan was actually the tallest kid in his grade, and he really liked school, but he also liked his cake. He checked his watch again, turned himself around, and marched toward school. He was very close to Tom when he saw the little free library for the first time. It rose up ahead of him, little by little, as he climbed the last bit of hill. Evan didn't know right away that it was a library. All he saw was the back of it, a wooden rectangle sitting on a pole. A new sign? Or maybe someone's art project? As he got closer, he understood that he was looking at a box. He crossed the street, stepped onto the grassy town green, and walked all the way around it. Aha! It was not just a box on a pole. It was a box on a pole with a set of small glass doors on one side. And behind the doors were books. He was still early for school. No one else was near the strange book box, other than a large and beautiful orange cat laying in the shade beneath it. I know you, Evan said. He did know this cat. Evan's mother called it Goldie. In the morning, Goldie was usually sitting in an upstairs window of Martinville's history house, about 50 steps away. Before this, Evan had never once seen the cat outside, but he was pretty sure it was the same cat. What are you doing out here? Evan asked. The cat tipped his face up to the sun and blinked sleepily. Evan turned his attention to the funny box of books. When he pulled, the glass doors swung open easily. A smell floated out. A smell like applesauce and cheese, but mostly applesauce. Strange, but it was a good smell. A little handwritten sign was attached to the single shelf inside. Take a book, leave a book, or both. Evan breathed in applesauce, and maybe cheese, until there was no more room inside him for the air to go. Take a book, leave a book, or both. Evan decided to take 2 books, the smallest 2, which he figured was the same as taking 1. He shoved them into his bag without looking at them, and then he carefully closed the glass doors. But that smell seemed to follow him all the way to school. The cat stayed put. Chapter 6. Mortimer. Mortimer had slept for only a few hours, which was not enough sleep for a cat. He blinked at the boy, who was now opening the small library doors. His library's first visitor. He summoned his strength and sat up. The boy was Evan, he remembered. Like his hearing, Mortimer's memory was excellent. From his many hours of sitting at his upstairs window in the history house, Mortimer had learned a lot about the people of Martinville, including most of their names. He watched the boy read Al's sign. Take a book, leave a book, or both. A face, Mortimer thought, can also be a question mark. Unexpectedly, he felt his small heart pounding. He wanted this boy with a question mark face to take a book. Evan's hand darted into the library. Good, Mortimer's heart said. Good. As he watched Evan walk away, Mortimer felt his exhaustion return. But the sight of Al, who was now coming across the lawn with his food dish, gave him strength.